viewpoints and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest Radio, the radio you can see.
And hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Scarefest Television. This is November 28th. November's gone. It's down the toilet. It's like it didn't even happen. I have no idea how that happened. Tonight, my co-host is Joanna Hochstetter, and she's vertical. She's portrait tonight. That's that's an important. She's playing around with her camera there. And then, of course, my guest tonight is Mr. Zach Bales, who was a speaker. Actually, he's become pretty much an annual speaker now at Scarefest weekend. And so we'll be talking about what he had going on at Scarefest. Let's see. Joe Lewis is reviewing The Conjuring Last Rites tonight. You have anything else here? Yeah, that's about it. Oh, did everybody notice my banner for tonight's show? I just want to say, having Mothman stand in front of a mobile home to represent Appalachia was a stroke of genius on my part. It's a total stroke of genius. Okay, bring Zach on camera there. Zach, welcome back to the show.
Yeah,
and
it's great to be back.
On a serious note, congratulations on the new baby.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well,
Yeah, we're 5 weeks old, coming up on, I guess, next Tuesday. So we're
now, it does beg the question. So you had your wife had a baby on October 13th, and then you spoke at Scarefest a week fucking later?
Yes, that is true.
How do you get away with that, dude?
That's a good question. It takes a lot of, charm, I guess, maybe to try to.
Of course. Okay, now, Joanne, you can stay in the background, but I just want, I don't know if you saw the last interview. This guy took his, like, their first date was like Bigfoot hunting. It's.
That's true.
So,
that is true.
So she's a sport. She's a sport, as we say in the industry. Now, everybody, if you want to play the home version of the game, his website is paranormalroadtripper.net. Paranormalroadtripper.net. And speaking of the website, okay, Zach, first question right out of the gate. So you're still on this whole fuck North Dakota binge, huh?
I know. I still, years later, I still have not made it.
Do they just not have anything? Is it just like, y'all got not even a big turtle or nothing?
I can't find any good ghost stories, any cryptids, any UFO sightings. If I can find one of those things, I'm gonna try to make it up there one of these days. But I
would think it would be a hotbed of. Oh, wait, there's probably tons of UFOs. There's just no people to see them.
Well, now to see that may very well be the case right there. That would make a lot of sense then. Yeah.
Yeah. See, because look, I mean, it's. I put it this way: if you want to say high desert, that's pretty much,
Yeah, Leprechaun. The Leprechaun. I think the original Leprechaun took place in North Dakota. So maybe they have, maybe they got leprechauns up there to go take a look at. Who knows?
Okay, finally I'll get on topic. Okay, you spoke about Mothman. Now here's what I know about Mothman for the most part. Mothman prophecies. I'm done. Okay. See how easy it was? Now, that being said, okay, you said that you've been hunting this thing, whatever. So the first real question I'm going to give you is, I'm not given the widespread evidence that I usually want to say that's a cryptid. Okay, that's a cryptid animal, something. The appearances that I've seen and the stories that I've seen lean more toward it being something else. Now, what is your opinion on that? What's your research kind of shown on that?
Well, I first started looking into Mothman many years ago. I was drawn to go to Point Pleasant because of the film you mentioned a minute ago, the Mothman Prophecies, the Richard Gere film came out, it seemed like it's been about 25 years ago that film came out.
Oh, that was right after I graduated high school.
Yeah. And I'd never heard of the Mothman really until that film. And then I was drawn to start investigating the town and figuring out if this place, what was real and what maybe was fictionalized for the movie. And unfortunately, as far as the movie goes, a lot of the plot of the film was kind of Hollywoodized, I guess. They took a lot of the real events that transpired in West Virginia back in the 1960s, even into the 1970s. They sort of crammed it all together, and they even took things that happened hundreds of miles away and sort of brought it on the legend as well, and just to tell a good story. But like you were saying a moment ago, yeah, the Mothman, no one is entirely sure exactly what this was, and there are so many competing theories. Some people will tell you that it is a cryptid, a creature that exists, physical creature that exists out there in the world. Other people will tell you that it is a mutation of sorts from the TNT area north of Point Pleasant. A lot of chemicals in the post-World War II were stored in this area. A lot of leaching into the ground, pollution, and this sort of thing. And some people tell you that this is a waste, not nuclear, but a TNT, a waste byproduct. And other people tell you that it's an interdimensional being, like
See, I hate to admit it, but if it's a thing, if these are not, if these people just, and I don't think they imagined all the sightings. I have done at least that much research to know that this was, for a while there, this was a hot topic. But to have it just absolutely, far as I know, disappear off the map. The only thing I've seen out of Mothman since then is people going looking for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of specials. I fell asleep on watching them last Sunday, to be honest with you. I pulled Mothman, just, on my Roku TV, and just hit play, and by the middle of the first thing I was watching, I was snoozing. I ended up in Loch Ness or someplace by the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, the last official, I guess you want to call it official Mothman sighting, or canonical Mothman sighting, was in the 1960s. And ever since, there have been reports of winged creatures, usually prior to a disaster of some sort. According to some, the Mothman was seen in Japan shortly before they had the tsunami that resulted in the nuclear meltdown that they had. This has been 10, 12 years ago. Other people, I've heard recent reports. There's a couple of investigators out there who claim that the Mothman is currently in the Chicago area, that there have been a lot of sightings over the course of the last 5-6 years. And, a lot of the conspiracy theorists, people who believe that the Mothman is trying to warn us about some forthcoming disaster, they are convinced perhaps that there may be a disaster that's forthcoming.
Well, I would argue that Chicago is a disaster, but that's a whole nother episode. See, my thing about that is, okay, but as you pointed out, the last 5-6, I think it's been longer than that, really, since I used a little speck on the camera lens were next to some building in Chicago. I am fairly sure, not having been to Point Pleasant, I'm fairly sure that is not a bustling metropolis of people.
That is correct.
I would be correct in assuming that. So but they were, like I said, cranking out detailed descriptions. I mean, the car that got buzzed by him, and they looked out the window, and he's like trucking down the highway beside him or whatever the hell it was. We're not getting those kind of sightings. Even in Chicago, it's always somebody saw something that they couldn't identify, that I know of anyway. Tell me if I'm wrong, of course.
The way I understand it, a lot of the more modern sightings in Chicago are seen around the O'Hare International Airport there. A lot of pilots and people who work at the airport have made many of the claims that are given a little more credence. And maybe that's because I guess we trust these people with their lives to fly planes. And so people are more inclined to believe the reports coming out of them. But you're absolutely right. I mean, per capita, if the same per capita number of sightings were happening in Chicago as were happening in Point Pleasant back in the 1960s, there would be tens of thousands of sightings of the Mothman. And it's just not happening. To my knowledge, unless a lot of people are afraid to come forward, which, that opens up a whole nother can of worms. I feel like
Now,
sometimes people are
then the
intimidated.
final point before I toss you over to Joe. Okay, now the final thing on that is, okay, this has been going on, in your words, at least 5-6 years. I think maybe even longer in Chicago. How much warning do we get here?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to go down that avenue, saying he always appears when something's about to happen.
Yeah. No,
we ain't got all
agree.
goddamn day is what I'm saying.
Yes, because in Point Pleasant, of course, famously, the Mothman appeared 13 months to the day prior to the disaster, and I'm sure we'll talk about the disaster later if the audience isn't necessarily familiar. But 13 months to the day before that particular disaster occurred, the Mothman was seen for the first time in Point Pleasant. I'll say there was actually, and I was hoping to talk a little bit about this evening as well. There's actually earlier Mothman sightings in West Virginia that are not. I don't know. It's not just confined to Point Pleasant. The Mothman phenomena wasn't just confined to Point Pleasant, and that's a misconception I feel like that a lot of people have about the Mothman. They think of Point Pleasant as being like Mothman Central. No one, anywhere else saw this creature. That's not true. There were actually multiple sightings of a large winged Mothman-like creature in the days before the quote unquote original Mothman sighting in November of 1966.
Well, tell you what, yeah, well, that's what we'll do. I'll just turn you over to Joanne after the break. Okay. That being said, now does that in your mind lock him more than and we'll lump all the solid objects, whether it's a mutant or nuclear waste, whatever the hell it is. We'll lump all them into the crypto zoological thing. But because to me, that just is another leading thing that says, well, that avenue of thought appears to be wrong because not that much goes on in West Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah, it really it's a mystery. It's a riddle and wrapped inside of an enigma. Everything about the Mothman is, and I think that's why it's so compelling so many years later. Because I would argue that 20 years ago or a little over 20 years ago when they released the Mothman Prophecy, the film based on the book by John Keel, and when they started the Mothman Museum, I think it was a couple years after that film came out, and then they started the festival, the Mothman Festival.
It's big. Yeah, no, that part of it's big. Yeah.
No, at first, those things were very, very small. They were not a big deal. And just in the past, really, it's been since 2016, 2017 that the Mothman has just exploded in popularity. And you just can't get out from under a shadow anywhere you go. I have a joke. I've got a running joke with my brother. We go on trips together. He's not much into paranormal, but anytime we go anywhere, a horror convention, or if we're on the road, and this past summer we went up to Salem, Massachusetts, just to check out some of the witchcrafty stuff. And I told him, I said, how many Mothman shirts and how many Mothman mugs and things you see? He said, oh, you won't see any up here in New England. There's no way you'll see that. And I said, I guarantee it. And sure enough, every store has Mothman merchandise. It's like the Mothman, he's become everybody's favorite cryptid. And I'm not really sure why that is. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
Because he's got an actual Hollywood movie, and Bigfoot has a lot of B-roll horror movies, that, and a couple episodes on $6 Million Man, and he's done. Well, let's talk. Okay, in case anybody happens to be in the chat room that lived in a bucket for the last 30 years and didn't see the movie, let's go ahead and tell them about the Point Pleasant Bridge. Because this is actually, I knew about the Point Pleasant Bridge before I knew anything about the Mothman. I was just reading something one day and saw about the bridge collapse. I said, that happened?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the culmination of really 13 months of mayhem that was experienced all throughout the state of West Virginia, not just in Point Pleasant. Why don't we start at the very beginning? And I'll tell you about some of those earlier Mothman sightings. A couple of those sightings that took place before the Point Pleasant was even involved. Believe it or not, 3 days before the chase down the highway there in Point Pleasant, the teenagers, the one that everybody's heard of, the Mothman was actually seen about an hour northeast of Point Pleasant in the town of Clendenin, West Virginia. And that on that night, or it was actually an afternoon, I'm sorry, there was a group of grave diggers, a fellow by the name of Kenneth Duncan, and he was digging a grave for his father-in-law, and a bunch of men in a cemetery there in Clendenin, and just they were alone in the cemetery, and all of a sudden Kenneth Duncan, he took a break. He was in charge. I guess he was, bosses get a chance to take a break while everybody else is working, and he kind of stepped out of this hole they were digging and was patting down his forehead, and he looked up in the trees overlooking this grave. And sure enough, he saw what he later described as the Mothman. Big, winged, dark, glowing red eyes, every feature that would become synonymous with the Mothman later on in the story. This creature was perched up in one of the trees. At first, he didn't know what this thing was. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. He assumed that maybe it was a person wearing a mask. I'm not sure what he thought, but he didn't think it was some sort of a cryptid or alien, or he was just convinced, something's amiss here. Suddenly, creature opens up its wings, huge wingspan, takes off, flying across the cemetery, gliding, he refers to it as, straight over his head. He barely has time to kind of turn around as this creature just disappears into the tree line on the opposite side of the cemetery. Unfortunately, he was the only one who saw it. The other guys had their heads down. He starts panicking and saying, "Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that?" The other guys are saying, "See what?" He goes on to explain it to all of them. "This is what I saw. This is what, just happened." And they're, "Really? And are you serious? Have you been drinking?" "No, I'm not. Of course not." And the rest is history. Because 3 days later in Point Pleasant, the same thing was seen, made the newspapers in Point Pleasant, was picked up by every newspaper in the state of West Virginia and beyond, really. And the grave diggers from a few days earlier, they said, "You're not going to believe this, but other people have apparently seen this creature too, cross state." And he came forward with his story. And that's actually the first canonical Mothman sighting. Before anything else took place in West Virginia or in Point Pleasant, there was a sighting in Clendenin. And that was just the first of several sightings leading up to the famous chase down the highway there on the Ohio River.
We're going to take a quick break, everybody, and we'll be right back with more of the Mothman.
Are you a fan of horror movies, books, comics, music, and collectibles? Rue Morgue magazine is for you. Subscribe today to receive 6 or 12 print issues annually and join me, executive editor Andrea Subissati, on an ongoing journey through the horror genre of the past, present, and future. Plus, get access to unmissable special editions such as A Century of Witches, 50 Years of Gore Cinema, British horror movies, and so much more. Rue Morgue, the world's premier horror and culture and entertainment magazine since 1997. Accept no substitute.
Hey, we are back. So I kind of want to go back to the beginning of how you started. So you grew up here in Kentucky and you operate under the moniker the Paranormal Road Tripper. So how did your upbringing here in the Bluegrass State, shape your interest in cryptids and the paranormal?
Well, I tell you what, Kentucky, I refer to Kentucky, especially South Central and really all of Central Kentucky, this region as the Bluegrass Triangle, because of all the weird stuff that people have experienced all across the region. And I feel like growing up in an area that has so many ghost stories, so many famous UFO cases, so many cryptids, tales of monsters that are said to roam these hills and hollers. It's hard not to get interested in this field of research. Not only that, but I tell you, I always cite this book that my parents had in my house when I was a kid. They were school teachers, so they brought home all sorts of sets of books, and they wanted me and my brother to read them, and we did. And there was one in particular, was the Childcraft series. And there was a book in that series on math. There was a book on science. There was a book on, it was like a 30-volume series. But one of them was called Mysteries and Fantasies. And that was the one that always piqued my interest the most. any, open every page of that book up, and there would be a photo of the Patterson Gimlin film, and there'd be next page, and there's the McMinnville UFO photograph, and then the next page, and there was a piece on Mothman in there, I believe, as well. But growing up in an area that had so much folklore, and then being exposed to that at home, I was doomed from the start, I think, to get interested in all this kind of weird stuff. But yeah, I mean, Kentucky, it's such a wealth of this kind of stories. And we opened the Nightmare Gallery, a museum down in Somerset 3 years ago, and it really impresses me how many people come from all over the country. And one of the reasons that they make Kentucky one of the places that they want to stop on their vacation, on their road trip through the area, is because of all the folklore and all the weird stuff. They've heard about these tales from podcasts and movies, Amazon Prime series about Kentucky folklore, and all sorts of cool stuff, and books, and they just want to see it for themselves. And it's really nice to see that finally, Kentucky's, it's getting out there as a place that there's a lot of weird stuff in it. And it makes me proud, because that's kind of the mission we push at the Nightmare Galleries. We try to, I always tell people, if we don't strive to keep our local folklore, our local legends alive, sooner or later, some of these tales might just disappear or die completely. And to us, that would be a real shame. So that's kind of what we're all about. And and I teach folklore at a high school down in Somerset. And I'm always telling my students about folklore in class too. I feel like it's a thing that unites people together, folklore, and Kentucky's got so much of that. It's just a wealth of that stuff. So I hope that in a roundabout way, I just answered your question.
Oh, indeed. I'm like, I'll go to explore one area, and then I'll find, like, I went to go to the Night House. I live in South Central Kentucky, and just to do a paranormal investigation. And then right next door, they're like, oh, did you hear about the Hopkinsville Goblins? So it's like, whoa, what is this? So there's always something new to learn in Kentucky, and it's great here. I love it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I know we're talking about Mothman tonight. Believe it or not, there's a lot of those strange winged creature sightings in Kentucky as well. So I don't know. Appalachia is a weird place. Appalachia is a strange region.
Yes. Weird and wonderful. So
yes.
You brought up the museum. So in Somerset, I kind of knew that it is the International Paranormal Museum and Research Center. Did the name change, or am I thinking of two different places?
Those are two different places. We
okay.
Originally opened, we were kind of, me and another fellow were in a team kind of in the International Paranormal Museum back when it opened in 2017. And we kind of separated out, and, having two exhibits is what we thought better than one. And I tell you, we get people all the time, or at least I think the International Paranormal Museum recently had to close their doors because of an issue over the building, but we'd have people who were flying. One gentleman came through one day, he said, I was flying from Memphis to Cleveland, and he said I needed to stop somewhere to fill up on gas in his plane, and he was looking for some town with some interesting stuff, and he found two paranormal museums in one town. He said, oh, that sold me. And so he had literally landed in Somerset at our airport here just to refuel, because he wanted to go to both those paranormal museums. And we were both museums were getting that all the time. People who would only come to the region because they saw both museums. So it kind of worked out for us for the longest time. So yes,
okay,
it's a different place. So if you've been to the International Paranormal Museum, have you been to the other one before?
No, my buddy in Glasgow, Eric Carver, he's with Scarefest as well. We were trying to plan a trip there, and then we finally found a weekend or a time that would work, and we noticed it was closed. And I was going to ask you about that, but then I was like, oh wait, there's somewhere else we can go. So now I'm excited again.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. Anybody who comes to the gallery, we're by appointment only. I always tell our prospective guests, if you go to our website, nightmaregallery.net, you can book a tour on there, and it's like booking a haircut appointment or something. You pick your time spot, and that allows it to where I can be there every time. I guide all the tours myself. It's free, by the way, free admission. I guide the tours. Tours last about 30 minutes. We kind of weave through a lot of the exhibits, but it's impossible to cover everything in 30 minutes. I kind of get it down to just the highlights, just a tale here about our ghost stories, a tale here about UFOs. And again, Kentucky's got so much weird stuff. It's hard to cover everything, but we always give people time at the end of the tour. I tell everybody, walk around, ask questions, look at all the different things that we have to offer. But we also have a lot of horror movie memorabilia and whatnot as well. we're big horror movie fans, and that's another reason why we love going to Scarefest every year. It's just one of what's the best of its kind, if you ask me. Any of those we've ever been to, and I tell you what, this past Scarefest had one of the greatest lineups of guests. I tell you, it was incredible, really.
Oh yes, it's always a great time, and it seems to get better every year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think you probably kind of answered this, but can you elaborate more on what, when you founded these museums? So what drove you towards creating a public space for kind of the weird and the unexplored rather than keeping it, purely academic or private?
Well, that's you said. I've been collecting things, mementos from traveling. My wife and I, we've called ourselves paranormal road trippers for a number of years. It's kind of the moniker we go under. And when I write books, I put our logo on there. And I've written a few books about weird stuff or paranormal topics. And when we go on the road, a YouTube channel, Facebook, all these things, we always use the term paranormal road tripper. And but we're always collecting things, just mementos from our travels. And it got to the point to where it was kind of like, well, what good is having all these things if there's not, anybody to see, if we're just going to enjoy them ourselves? And so it was kind of really a no-brainer. We know we need to put this stuff on display. We need to find a place and we can put this stuff on display and hopefully share some of these stories and things that we have with the world. And I tell you, we have all sorts of objects who have been given to us over the years. A lot of people have called us up over the last 20 years and said things like, guys, I've got something in my home, an object that I'm not really sure I want to have in my home anymore. I think it might be haunted. Would you care to come in and take it off our hands? Well, I've never turned anybody down just yet. And here at the gallery, we have a whole collection of objects that are purported to be haunted that we've had a lot of weird experiences out of. We have a couple of dolls in our gallery that we've had since we first opened our doors in 2022. And we've had several thousand guests come through in the past 3 years, but more than 400 of those guests have claimed to have seen those dolls move inside of the display case that they're in. Guests, of course, seeing their heads move, their eyes move, their shoulders, elbows, hands, fingers. Most recent sighting, by the way, was on Wednesday of this week. So all sorts of weird stuff. But it's not just ghost stories. Again, there's cryptids and all sorts of fun. So yeah, anybody who's interested in anything that goes bump in the night, that's what we, anything that fits under that moniker, we certainly have displays for those things, including some of Kentucky's horror movie connections as well. Kentucky's got a proud history of horror. Tommy Lee Wallace, who was a guest at Scarefest this year, the guy who created the look of Michael Myers, the Captain Kirk mask and all that. He was born and raised in Somerset. He's a Somerset native. So we have kind of a shrine of sorts set up for him in there as well.
Oh, wow. I'm just more excited now to definitely get over there and make a day of it. And of course, schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh. All right. I think it's about time for me to kick it back over to Wes.
Okay, we'll do the announcements. And of course, the topic du jour right now in our little world of Scarefest is Spawn of Scarefest, coming up June 5th through 7th. 2026. It's our first hotel show at the Marriott Griffin Gate. I was just there this past week, taking another tour. Not that it matters, but just letting y'all know. And tickets for that. We do have platinum tickets on sale. Now, everybody pay attention. There's only 2 levels of tickets this year. Platinum VIP and general admission. General admission is going on sale December 8th. Yes. But right now, if you take the platinum ticket, that's the room package and the early entry and some other stuff that's listed on the ticket page. Anyway, you can go to spawnofscarefest.com and find out more about that. But yes, those tickets are on sale. And so if you want to get it, if you want VIP, now's the time, because they are, of course, limited quantity based on the number of hotel rooms in the hotel. And then the only other thing I got for you tonight, on at Fear the Talking Heads, they're talking about horror sequels. This week's episode is a collaboration with Bonehead Weekly on horror sequels and remakes that they preferred over the original. So go to YouTube, look for at Fear of the Talking Heads, at Fear of the Talking Heads, and there's the show. Okay, now I'll get you back on Mothman here. Okay, here's my guess. Mothman hit it big, the Mothman Festival, I should say, probably about 2003 when they put that damn statue up. That's now, here's a serious crypto question. Doesn't sound like it. Why does nobody, when they spot a cryptid, Mothman, Bigfoot, nobody ever describes them having junk? And I'm looking at this statue, and he's got a great ass, by the way. If you haven't Googled that, everybody, go on there.
Shiny hiney, I think it's what they
shiny hiney. But and that sounds like a bullshit question. But if you're gonna say, I mean, nobody says, "Oh, he was wearing a spacesuit. Oh, he was wearing knickers." You know, he wasn't, gray sweatpants, whatever. And Bigfoot, same thing.
Well, I will say this with Bigfoot. If you go back and watch the Patterson-Gimlin film, they say that was a female Bigfoot, because of an anatomical
breast. Yeah.
Yes. So
that's not junk, dude.
Well, that's true. That is true.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I know dudes with junk. I mean, with breast. So yeah, that's that. I don't feel that's a defining characteristic. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Now back to Mothman in Appalachia. Now you we're kind of getting on the direction that winged creatures are being seen in Kentucky's little share of Appalachia.
Yes.
Do the descriptions made up? I mean, the red glowing eyes, to me, more so than the wings and the size and everything. Sometimes I'm thinking, that's a big bird. But the red eyes do kind of stand out to me, because they never say, "Oh, he had red eyes." It's always red glowing eyes. So, yeah. Are they lining up, those type sightings?
I tell you, they are. They're down near Cumberland Falls, which is, purported to be the, let's see, I want to say, they say it's the second largest waterfall east of the Mississippi River, I think is what they call it, in south of Niagara, maybe. I'm trying to remember exactly what they say, but right next to Cumberland Falls is a smaller waterfall known as Dog Slaughter Falls. And it's actually tucked away just a few miles east of Cumberland Falls. And it's on this road called Devil's Creek Road, which is a very ominous name. But the reason they call it Dog Slaughter Falls, and the reason they call this Devil's Creek Road, it's all kind of connected together. There is, for years, people's pets in the area would go missing near this stretch of Devil's Creek Road. They would find them later, chewed up and this sort of stuff. And Devil's Creek Road became synonymous with some sort of a work of devilry or something that was causing these animals to be slaughtered. And I tell you what, it wasn't long before strange winged creature sightings were seen out there. If you go down to Whitley County to this day, or McCreary County, which are right, neighbor each other right there on the falls, the border, they'll tell you of the Birdman of Devil's Creek. This has been something that my dad grew up in this area, so he's 70 years old, and he grew up hearing about the Birdman of Devil's Creek right down there next to Dog Slaughter Falls. They say that the Birdman is the one that's claiming these animals' lives. And the reports of the Birdman are eerily similar to the Mothman, large winged, red eyes. The original Mothman sightings claim that it was a headless creature, like that the eyes were buried in the torso of this creature. But I haven't heard that description with the Birdman of Devil's Creek. I have heard some of the old timers refer to the glowing red eyes and that sort of thing. So yes, I would say absolutely the sightings match up, at least to a point, with what they were seeing in Point Pleasant back in the 1960s. And there's still sightings to this day. I mean, I was down at Cumberland Falls this is 2 weeks ago, and I was talking with one of the park rangers, because they have a lot of ghost stories down there. The Ghost Bride of Cumberland Falls. I brought up that story with him. We kind of have a deal worked out with Cumberland Falls. We kind of have a passport program. It's a long story, but where they come to our gallery and get a passport, and they go down there and get stamps. And so I for the Ghost Bride of Cumberland Falls, and I was talking to one of the guys. I said, "I got a question for you. I said, have you ever heard of the Birdman of Devil's Creek?" And he said, "Oh yeah." He said, we get more people coming down here asking us about the Birdman than we do about the Ghost Bride of Cumberland Falls. He said, but I'm telling you, he says not a day that goes by that we don't hear people asking us about both those things, which are the area folklore. So
maybe Mothman. I'm going to fess up. Maybe Mothman's a little more widespread than I realized. As far as
and I tell you,
go ahead.
And the dog slaughter idea, and that kind of goes back to the second Mothman sighting. Before it was ever seen in Point Pleasant, there was a gentleman, Merle Partridge was his name, and he lived in Center Point, West Virginia. And one night, his television, he was sitting there watching TV. This was the night before so November the 14th, 1966. Merle Partridge was sitting in his house in a really remote part of Center Point, West Virginia, just a gravel road, way out in the woods, and he's watching TV on, I think, one of those rabbit ear, TV deals. And all of a sudden, TV goes bizarre, makes some wild noise, and then cuts to just the snow on the screen. It coincides with Merle's dog, Bandit, German Shepherd, starts going berserk, just barking and carrying on. Of course, Merle thinks it's probably whatever the noise was that the screen emitted, the snow on the screen. He thinks that's what tore the dog up. So he goes to take the dog out onto the front porch. He's got like a screened-in front porch, and he starts putting the dog out there. And as he's putting the dog outside, according to Partridge, down the way, 100 yards, maybe not even that, from his house, he had kind of an outbuilding, not really a barn, just a storage shed sort of. And right down near this storage shed, he claimed that he was seeing these red lights, eyes perhaps, staring at him, creeped him out. Dog's going ballistic still. Dog pulls away from him. Bandit's able to pull away from him, darts across the yard towards let's call them eyes, I guess. And Merle said he was too scared to go after it himself. He was terrified. He heard his dog barking. He didn't even have the courage to stay out on the front porch. He closed the door and he listens. He hears the dog barking. Suddenly the dog stops barking. Well, he waits for the dog to come home. Doesn't come home. Minutes pass, hours pass, no sign of Bandit. Next morning, Bandit's still not returned home. Partridge is still scared, solid. He finally opens up the front door to try and see what happened as soon as it's daylight. And he sees what he claims are the dog's footprints in the grass headed down there, follows them all the way down there to where the outbuilding was, right to where he thought he saw these, again, we'll call them eyes, and the dog's footprints disappear. He sees them. Looks like they circled a couple times and then gone, vanished. Wasn't as if it had started off in another direction or this way or that, just gone completely. Never saw the dog again. So if that follows with what we were talking about a minute ago with the Birdman of Devil's Creek, dog slaughter falls, stealing people's pets, that sort of thing, then yeah, I mean, we even see more Mothman parallels to the Kentucky region too.
That was the most depressing story anybody's ever told on this show.
Well, I tell you what, the coolest thing of all, though, and again, this is the next night. Next night was the famous night, November 15th, 1966. The teenagers were out north of Point Pleasant at that TNT area, and they see this creature come shambling out of one of the old munitions, the power plants, and glowing red eyes, whole 9 yards, shocks them. They take off in their car, heading down the highway there back towards Point Pleasant. They think if only we can get back to town, we'll be safe. They claim that the creature's flying after them at this point, flying after them fast, too. They were driving, according to all four of them that night, they were going over 100 miles an hour. Well, the creature was flying at over 100 miles an hour right alongside their car. Well, according to the driver of the car, a guy by the name of Roger Scarberry, he claimed after the fact that upon returning to town, they didn't go straight to the police. They were worried the police would think they were crazy. They went to a restaurant, convinced themselves that all they saw was nonsense. They said, well, let's go back up one more time and make sure we saw what we thought we saw. Turn around and go back north again. And this time they come across what they claimed was a dead German Shepherd, black German Shepherd, And the Mothman is sort of lording over this creature on the ground. That's the final straw. They wheel the car around again and didn't head back down to the police. But that story popped up the next day. And that was only the point where Morrow Partridge came forward and said, my God, I lost a German Shepherd 100 miles from here last night. And now what looked like a dead German Shepherd was, I guess, Mothman was having his way with this, eating this creature there. I don't know. It was a fascinating part of the early Mothman history. And it doesn't get as much coverage, I don't think, as it probably should. Just because
the stories where the dog dies never do good, dude. They just don't do good. Okay. Joanna, over to you now that I'm depressed and crying. The Mothman's got to eat.
Yeah. I guess so. Oh, as I'm holding my kitty. So, can you tell us about a cryptid investigation or maybe a field trip that ended up being very different than what you expected, like in a good or a bad way?
Well, I tell you, and I wrote a book about the Mothman a few years back. I guess it was 2024, so not really a few years back, but last year. It seems like, I guess when you have new kids and you're waking up every 2 hours, every 2 hours in the night, I guess the days kind of seem, it seems
indeed
like a long time. But I guess it was last year. But in that book, I talk about the Mothman legend, and I got maps and things to many of the original Mothman locations. But I also, one of the things that I wanted to have in the book as well was my own experiences with what I called Mothman-like phenomena. Me and my wife are always going to these weird places, these places where there's been unusual reports, and just trying to check them out ourselves. And this was not too many years back. I want to say 2020. During COVID, actually, and right when COVID was starting to, they thought it was over, in the summer of 2020, they thought, okay, it's starting to wrap up. And we were having, just cooped up for so long. We thought, let's go on a trip or something. And we headed down to the Florida Everglades, just to check out the skunk ape, the legend of the skunk apes, one down there, that a Bigfoot type creature that said to live in the trees, really, and roam Turner River Road down there in Big Cypress National Preserve. We decided we would go down there and we would go to the skunk ape research headquarters, and we'd meet the fellow who runs it. He had recorded a famous video of a skunk ape and all this, and we thought this would be a nice getaway. We'd just drive down, and I mean, it's a long drive, but we thought, well, we've been cooped up for days, or for months at home, just trying to check this out. Well, we got down there and we met the fellow, and I said, what do we need to do if we want to go run into a monster or a skunk ape? I said, what do you suggest we do? And he said, well, and he's an eccentric guy. If you've ever met, his name's Dave Shealy. He's an interesting fellow. He's rather eccentric. He said, well, I tell you what they love more than anything else. He said, I'll tell you, they love skunk apes. By they is what I mean. He said, I tell you what they love more than anything else. They love raw animal liver, and they love lima beans. Well, I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can come up with any raw animal liver here, but we can probably go to the next town over, maybe over to the Everglades City, and maybe get a can of lima beans. And he said, that'd be great. Yeah, if you can get some lima beans. And he said, I tell you where you need to go. You need to go up Turner River Road, X number of miles, and there's this trail. It'll wind through the, like a hiking trail. And he said, you ought to go after dark, though. After dark is when a lot of people see so he got us good and creeped out a little bit, and he told us to go get lima beans, and we kind of pinpointed exactly where he told us to get. And so that night we decided, okay, well, let's head that way. Well, we hadn't actually driven on Turner River Road until this time. And so when we get off the blacktop onto this road that is just barely maintained, right across the Big Cypress National corrugated road, just rattling going up here. And we got like 6 miles of this. I'm thinking, I don't know if we'll ever go. We're going about 5 miles an hour, and still our teeth are just rattling in our heads. But it's pitch black, and I'd put the convertible top down. We were driving a convertible that night, which was really silly to be doing this in the middle of the swamp anyway, because of mosquitoes. And we were on an adventure though, and we were young and foolish, even though it was only about 5 years ago. So maybe I don't necessarily call us young anymore. But so we're going down the road, And we're talking about this and that, and talking about, are we actually going to get out of the car if we get to this hiking trail? Because there's alligators and all these things out here. We were trying to convince ourselves that we were, because I don't think we really wanted to get out, because it is creepy. You're getting out there all of a sudden, I kid you not, and this is how I start my Mothman book. Our headlights, as we're going down through there, only car on the road, probably not another human being, because no one lives on this. We're out in the middle of this state, or they're not state park, but national biological, wildlife. There's no one out here. Our lights fall on this, like a cat's eyes. I see you, the cat, when you turn your driveway, you can tell where the cat is because the eyes are kind of glowing. Well, our headlights ahead of us on this road, our headlights shine on what you can see their two eyes kind of glowing at it. Not red. I wouldn't say red like the Mothman or something like this, but there's definitely something. And as we kind of continue barreling along and our car's rattling up and down, our headlights bounce up and up and up. I kid you not, there is something big sort of hunkered on the side of the road up ahead, big, dark, black shape. And you kind of, again, its eyes are kind of turned toward us, and we see what looks like glowing eyes. Before we get close enough to be able to make out exactly what this creature is, because we're bouncing up and down, our headlights are barely, whatever it is, it kind of shambles to its feet, spreads its wings out, and boom, boom, and this thing darts off straight up in the sky. I have no idea what on earth it was, but it looks like nothing. It looked like nothing I'd ever seen before. I'm not trying to say it was the Mothman, because that would, I didn't see glowing red eyes, but it was big and black. It did not look like a bird. The way it shambled to its feet, we barely got a glimpse of this thing, but our jaws dropped. I was driving. I slammed on the brakes, and we're sitting there in silence, for several seconds and breathing heavy. And finally, one of us, what the heck was that? And it's like, get the convertible top back up. I don't know what. We better get the daggum top of this thing back up, because I don't know if we wanted to know what it was, but we did not end up going any further down that road. We did not get to that trail. We did not get out of the car. We turned right around in the middle of Turner River Road and started heading back south, and we kept our lima beans as a souvenir. It was not the skunk ape, that we saw. Not sure what it was. I'm not saying it was the Mothman either, but who knows? It could have been. I'm not sure. I know there's a lot of weird animals down there in the Everglades. It's kind of a catch-all for a lot of strange creatures and animals in that part of the world. A lot of creatures like to hide down. It's a good place to hide. People have hid bodies out there, I've been told. So maybe it's possible a Mothman might be hiding out in the Florida Everglades at this point.
That is feasible, but man, that was a good one. I'm over here like getting chills and laughing at the same time. That was impressive. All righty, let's kick it back over to Wes.
It's time for Bonehead Weekly.
Hey, Scarefest, this is Joe Lewis, Bonehead Weekly, and this week's review is the new Conjuring Last Rites. Also, I've got my, it's Happy Thanksgiving weekend. I've got my WKRP Thanksgiving shirt on. The movie I reviewed is not the movie I wanted to watch. I wanted to go see, and I couldn't get to the Black Phone 2, and those stupid Wicked movies took all the screens. Anyway, so the last time I watched one of these Conjuring movies, I think it was the one The Devil Made Me Do Something before this, was in a theater with Brandon Griffith. And after he stopped touching my legs, I almost fell asleep. Okay? It was so boring. The first one I really enjoyed. The second one was okay, I guess. And I don't even honestly remember the plot of the second and third one. I think the second one's in England. So I had no desire to watch this movie, but I had to get a review in. And I have to say, I actually kind of liked it. The Conjuring Last Rites isn't that bad. It's supposed to be the last one. Now, let's get past the fact that everything that happens in these movies is a complete fabrication and a lie, especially when it comes to the Warrens. And there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the Warrens, okay? Message Jake Gobold if you want to hear about any of that. That being said, I still kind of enjoyed it. There's some really good jump scares in this movie. The last one, I fell asleep. It was so boring. And it's just directed by the same guy. He directed Michael Chavez. He's directed The Nun, The Ghost of the Little Run, whatever. But this one was pretty good. Except for, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say the third act. What I want to say is it's like the last 10 minutes. And this is supposedly supposed to be the last one. I don't know. Some of you will know this story better. It's based on a house in Pittsburgh. But to me, it's just a haunted mirror picture. And then I don't particularly believe in a lot of this stuff. So it doesn't bother me when they change it up from real life like it does some of you all. So basically, the Warrens, Ed's had a heart attack. They're kind of retired. They've had a daughter. There's a flashback at the beginning of the movie that shows how they were almost attacked by this demon, and their daughter almost died before she was born. And then they brought her back to life, and yada, yada, yada. Cut to this family, this big Catholic family gets a mirror. One of the dads buys it for the confirmation of, the grandfather buys it for the confirmation of his granddaughter. The mirror is possessed and it's got demons in it and starts wrecking their family. And the Warrens have to come back into the game to save them. And it turns out the mirror, demon, whatever, wanted the daughter the whole time, is coming back to get them. It's hard to follow any of this. I don't expect any of you to follow it. I didn't follow it. What I would say is there's some pretty good jump scares throughout this movie. Some really got to me. I was like, oh, watching it by myself in the basement. The last 5 or 10 minutes, though, once the mirror kind of spins and is twisting and trying to stop, that one, it gets a little, it's not scary anymore. Up until that point, though, there's some good scares in this movie, so I recommend it. And there's some decent acting. And I like the people who play all the characters in this movie. That being said, should you watch The Conjuring Last Rites? It's on HBO Max right now. Sure, you should watch it. It's not bad, and you've probably already seen it. But it is a new release on HBO, and it is Thanksgiving weekend, and it'll give you an excuse to break up the monotony from the National Turkey Day and your family and everything else is going on. I hope you're having a good Thanksgiving. I'm deep frying a turkey right now, so I probably should go outside and check that out. Check out Conjuring Last Rites. It's pretty good, actually, considering the other movies. I still like the first, and there's a whole thing at the end where you get to see different people at a wedding who are, I don't even remember them. I probably won't remember the plot of this one before long, but it isn't bad, and I really enjoyed some of those jump scares. So this has been Joe. Happy Thanksgiving. I will see you all later, maybe at the spawn of Scarefest.
Today in Obscure Holidays.
Full graphic.
Everybody, it's National Maize Day. National Maize Day is November 26th this year, the day, always the day after Thanksgiving. Maize is rich in vitamins, fiber, and antioxidants, and this yellow gift of nature is worth so much more. Maize is so beneficial that it has a day carved out every year just to celebrate it, but for some reason, nowhere in this article does it say corn. It's maize. I don't know those are different. I always thought it was the same thing. But anyway, it's National Maize Day, and I just want everybody to know that. Okay. We're finishing up the show now, of course, with our guest, Zach Bales, talking about Mothman. And I had a really good question to lead off with, and I already forgot what it was. I'm kind of humbled, you might say, because I didn't realize that the whole Mothman phenomenon, I knew there were scattered reports of it, but I didn't really realize there was any cohesiveness ongoing with the reports of it. So thank you for educating me there.
Yeah, and I always tell people the Mothman Museum up in Point Pleasant, if you've never had a chance to go, it's got a wealth of information concerning many of the sightings. Newspaper reports, they've probably got every newspaper article that has ever been written about the Mothman, the original ones from 5-6 decades ago, that are all on display there. And really, one of my favorite weekends of the year every year is the third weekend of September, the Mothman Festival. Words can't describe just how much fun this event is for anybody who goes. They get a lot of repeat guests, and it's the largest outdoor festival event that we go to, I think, every year. We set up a table and sell, information about our museum and sell T-shirts and things. I tell you what, it's a great event. So even if you're not even maybe into the Mothman, I think you'd like going to the festival just because it's such a charming little town, West Virginia. And you play John Denver as you're crossing the bridge into West Virginia.
No, it's on my bucket list to do. Every year I write it in my calendar every year, and every year I think, oh God, this is a month before Scarefest. There's no damn way I'm going. But now, tell me a little. Okay, now I know this town is like the size of Berry, Kentucky. I mean, it's not a big town. I mean, how far away do you have to stay to get a hotel room, for example?
Well, I tell you what, me and my wife, we always book our our hotel, believe it or not, they go on sale usually the day after the Mothman.
Oh, I'd say, yeah.
The next year. So when we're on driving home from Mothman Festival, we usually book a hotel for the next year. And if you don't get on it as quickly as that, you can't. Getting one in the area itself is really, really impossible. As far as you could stay in Huntington or Ashland, Kentucky. Those are both within reason. I'm 40-minute drive up there. But really, from Kentucky, if you're coming from Lexington or even as far away as Somerset, you can be up and back in a single day. You could leave out in the morning, check out the events that they have at the festival, and probably make it home.
No, I could have 10 years ago. No, I don't do that anymore. Yeah, that's not happening. I was just thinking it would be a lot of fun to go up there and then take a side trip, go hunting the Mothman, and take like labradoodles as bait. Now that I know this entire dog angle.
You probably would be the first person to take a dog up there trying to bait the Mothman out of it. And I tell you what, it's interesting, the TNT area there north of town with all those abandoned military facilities and things. Right. The night after the festival, if you drive out that road, it's like hundreds of cars.
Oh, I bet.
Walking through the swamp. And it's basically a swamp, really. It's a wildlife management. They're out there walking through with waders looking for this thing, thousands of them. So I don't know. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I encourage anybody who's thinking about going to check it out.
Now, the last thing I want to know about the Mothman is, okay, now you've established it's a more widespread phenomenon than I knew. That being said, with Point Pleasant still being ground zero for the Mothman legend, have there been any ongoing reports over the years? I realize there's nothing like that little time period, but is this something that, other than just having his own statue, is this still a thing down there?
A thing in Point Pleasant? You mean as in like this? Are they still seeing him in Point Pleasant?
Does anybody still report it from that particular area?
No. Okay. No. And I think there has never been another, after the bridge collapse and the Mothman sightings ended really in 1967 when the Silver Bridge collapsed. There has never been another Mothman sighting in the Point Pleasant area since, at least one that has not been reported. So, and that again furthers the idea that maybe the Mothman was trying to warn the town of this bridge collapse, but it claimed a lot of lives.
Sucks at it.
Yeah. Apparently, we didn't heed the warning, perhaps, or the locals did not heed the warning, and I think 40 plus people locally they lost their lives on December 15th. We're coming up on the anniversary here in just a few weeks of the bridge collapse, and actually next year, 2026 will be the 60th anniversary of the Mothman sightings and the 60th anniversary of the bridge collapse. So that's kind of a big moment, certainly in the legend.
Well, I ask you to predict the future now. What do you foresee being your passion over the next 11 months? In other words, leading up to Scarefest. Where do you think you're going next in the crypto ufology, your whole list of qualifications there?
Well, if I can find a way to get with these kids, if I can get some babysitters, me and my wife are that's the only problem, I guess, when you get the young kids. But if I can get a couple babysitters lined up, I tell you, we've for years and years we wanted to go to Egypt. To be honest with you, I'd love to get to Egypt in the next bit. There's the curse of King Tut. I'd love to have an exhibit about that in our gallery down in Somerset, but I don't know if that's feasible. If it's not feasible, we may stay closer to home, and who knows? I may go check out the Birdman of Devil's Creek. That's just an hour drive from here. I may put in some extra time looking into that legend.
The Birdman of Devil's Creek. See, I haven't heard of any of these things. The closest thing we have an area in our county called the Devil's Backbone, and it's gotten some really, really terrible. We'll call them. They're not even legends, but whispers. Stories. People. Everybody knows some devil cult that went up there.
Yeah. I tell you, there's a guy named Loren Coleman, and he runs the Cryptozoology Museum up in Maine. And he says anytime you ever hear a place called Devil's This or Satan's That or any place name like that, he always likes to go back through the history and find out exactly why it got that name. And
that's what I was about to tell you.
Yeah, he says more times than not, it's weird stuff.
Yeah, well, this one, they flew over it and realized there was a creek and a road and another creek, and the way the creek, it looks like somebody's backbone. And so somebody's flying over and said, "Ah, that's devil's backbone." And there, and this was like the 50s. They were doing aerial mapping. So I'm just saying, sometimes people just do it for sensationalism, I think. That's the show for tonight, everybody. We've had a great time talking with Zach Bales, and I bet you never got the junk question before on any of these podcasts.
I have never been asked that before.
I always try to take my viewers somewhere they've never been. And I hope I did that.
Thanks, Wes.
So everybody, next week. Okay, here's next week on Scarefest TV.
On the next episode of Scarefest TV, Brandon, Adrian, and Wes make their monthly public appearance to bring you up to date on the latest news from Scarefest Weekend and Spawn of Scarefest. The team knows you have a lot of questions about Scarefest's new hotel show, and they will be sharing what you need to know and answering questions from the online chats from Facebook and YouTube. Join us Friday, December 5th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time Zone, and catch up on all of our archived episodes at scarefestradio.com.
Now, before we close, thanks once again, Zach. I did put a public message out there. My AI / Photoshop skills have gotten so advanced that someone actually thought we posed for that picture that was on that banner. So I'm very, very flattered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I literally just told Banana, what's it called? Banana Ram or whatever the one AI is. I don't know. Nana Banana, that's the name of it. And literally it said, put me in a Santa suit, put that picture in healthcare. And it was, I have to say, it did not treat Brandon very well with the reindeer costume. But everybody, next month is December. That's when we'll be back, and it'll be Christmas month, and I'm trying to have just a whole bunch of Christmas themed stuff going on. We'll see you next week.